The night sky was heavy with smoke, broken ships and twisted metal lay in mountains across the endless scrap dump. Rust and fire mixed in the air, making it hard to breathe. The place was silent except for the distant cracking of collapsing hulls. It was the graveyard of forgotten machines, and also the hiding place for darker secrets. A lone human scavenger walked carefully across the piles of junk. His boots crunched on broken glass and melted steel. He had spent years in this wasteland, collecting parts to sell in the city. People called him stubborn, others called him foolish, but he believed the dump still held treasures waiting to be found. Tonight felt different. The air carried a strange hum, like electricity under the ground. He paused, holding his flashlight tight. The beam cut through the smoke and dust. For a moment, he thought he saw something moving between the piles of debris, something small, weak, but alive. Curiosity pulled him deeper. He pushed aside broken panels and wires. His light landed on a shape half buried under twisted metal. It was not a machine, not a human either. It was a young alien girl, her skin pale blue, her veins glowing faintly like liquid silver. She was breathing, but weak. Her body trembled, her eyes half closed. Someone had thrown her away like garbage. The human froze, torn between fear and pity. He had heard rumors of alien children being used as experiments, but never had he seen one in person. The girl whispered something, her voice shaking. It was not human language, but her tone was clear. She was begging for help. The human looked around nervously. If others found her, they would kill her or sell her for profit. He could leave her there, safe for himself, or he could take a risk that might change everything. Against his better judgment, he pulled the heavy metal aside. Piece by piece, he freed her from the junk. Her arms were scratched, glowing blood shining in the dark. When she tried to stand, she collapsed. Without thinking, he lifted her in his arms. She felt lighter than she looked, fragile, almost weightless. The night grew louder. Distant engines echoed in the sky above the dump. Someone was searching, ships scanning with beams of red light. He knew they were not searching for him, they were searching for her. His heart pounded. If they saw him carrying her, he would be hunted too. He ran through the maze of metal, jumping over broken panels. His flashlight flickered as he stumbled. The girl held on to his shirt, whispering weakly. Her touch felt strange, almost electric. Behind them, lights cut through the smoke. Scanning closer, he ducked low, hiding between two giant engines. His breath came fast, sweat running down his neck. The alien girl opened her eyes fully for the first time. They glowed like liquid silver, reflecting the light. He had never seen eyes like that. For a second, he almost forgot the danger. But then the red beams passed above, and he forced himself to move. At last, he reached the edge of the dump where his small hover cart waited. He placed her gently inside, covering her with old cloth. Engines roared above, shadows of ships sweeping past. He started the cart and drove away as fast as he could. The dump behind him shook as searchlights combed through the piles, but he slipped away into the night, unseen. The girl lay weak and silent, but alive. The human stared at her, his mind racing. Who was she, and why had someone thrown her away? And why did he feel as if his life had just changed forever? The scavenger's workshop was small and hidden at the edge of the old city. Rusty walls surrounded the place, and the smell of burned wires filled the air. He had lived here alone for years, fixing broken machines and selling scraps. Now, for the first time, someone else was inside his home, and that someone was not even human. The alien girl lay on an old metal bed, covered with patched blankets. Her skin still glowed faintly in the dark, silver veins pulsing with slow light. He watched her carefully, unsure if she was dangerous or not. Every few minutes she whispered in her strange language. The words sounded soft, almost like singing, but he could not understand them. The man sat in his chair, tools scattered on the table. He should have thrown her back into the dump, he thought. Bringing an alien into the city was madness. If the patrols found her, they would both be executed. Still, he could not forget the way she had begged for help. Her eyes had burned into his memory, glowing like silver fire. Suddenly, a loud noise echoed in the workshop. He turned quickly, reaching for a wrench as a weapon. The sound came from the corner where a broken drone lay. Sparks flew as the drone began to repair itself. The girl had opened her eyes, her hand reaching weakly toward the machine. Metal bent and wires reattached themselves, as if obeying her command. The human froze in shock. He had never seen anything like this. Machines fixing themselves under her touch. It was not normal alien tech. This was something deeper, something inside her blood. When she pulled her hand back, the drone powered up and hovered in the air, fully working. The man stepped closer, whispering, "You fixed it." The girl tilted her head, not understanding his words, but she smiled faintly, a tired smile. The drone hovered above them, lights glowing, then settled back down quietly. The workshop returned to silence, but the human's heart did not. He walked to the window and peeked outside. The city streets were still, but rumors traveled fast here. If someone learned about her powers, every hunter in the galaxy would come running. He pulled the curtain shut and locked the door. For now, no one must know she was here. Night passed slowly. The man could not sleep. He kept hearing small sounds, metal creaking, bolts shifting on their own. The girl was dreaming, her veins glowing brighter as if her body released hidden energy. Tools moved slightly on the table, as if an invisible hand touched them. The man watched nervously, sweat forming on his brow. Was she a blessing or a curse? By morning, the girl sat up, looking stronger than before. Her silver eyes scanned the workshop with curiosity. She pointed at a broken clock and then touched her chest. The man realized she was trying to ask something. He guessed she wanted to repair it. He handed her the old clock, wondering what she would do. Her fingers glowed faintly as she touched the gears. The clock ticked again, hands moving perfectly. She gave it back with a smile, her first real smile since he found her. The man felt his guard weaken. For a moment, she looked less like an alien and more like a lost child. But before he could speak, heavy footsteps echoed outside the workshop. The ground trembled with the weight of armored boots. Voices shouted orders in the street. The man's blood ran cold. The patrol was searching nearby. Had they already discovered she was here? The girl looked at him with wide eyes, sensing the danger. The man put a finger to his lips, signaling her to stay quiet. Shadows passed across the window, the sound of weapons clicking. The patrol captain barked a command, his voice sharp and cruel. Search every house. Leave nothing unchecked. The man's heart raced. His secret was no longer sci-fi. The patrol had left the street by dawn. The man waited in silence until their voices faded into the distance. Only then did he allow himself to breathe. The alien girl sat quietly on the bed, watching him with curious silver eyes. She had not spoken a single word he could understand, but somehow her gaze carried meaning. He tried to return to his normal work, fixing broken machines, but every time he picked up a tool, he felt her eyes following him. She was studying everything, the way he moved, the way he shaped wires, the way he forced two broken pieces to connect again. She was learning, fast. It made him uneasy, but also impressed him. Later that day, he turned on his old work drone. The small machine buzzed weakly and then collapsed with a spark. Dead again, the man muttered, tossing his wrench aside. The girl tilted her head, walked closer, and touched the drone. Her glowing veins pulsed brighter, and the broken circuits lit up as if they had never been damaged. The drone hovered smoothly in the air, spinning with perfect control. The man stared in disbelief, his mouth dry. Machines obeyed her like pets obey a master, but this time, something more happened. The girl lifted her hand, and the drone rose higher into the air without touching it. The machine moved left, right, up, down, following only her silent command. He stumbled back, his heart racing. This was no ordinary alien child. She was carrying living technology inside her very body. If the hunters knew she was here, they would burn the entire city to find her. The girl turned and looked at him, her silver eyes shining like molten light. She held out the drone, like a gift, and smiled faintly. The man felt torn between fear and wonder. That night, he could not sleep again. Strange noises filled the workshop, metal shifting as if alive. He saw her walking barefoot across the floor, her glowing veins brighter than before. Tools floated into the air around her, spinning gently like planets around a star. She was not even awake. Her eyes were closed. The man whispered her name in his mind, though he did not know it. Was she dreaming, or was this her true nature? The next morning, he decided to test her. He pointed at a pile of broken machine parts and then pointed to her. She understood quickly, kneeling beside the pile. Her hands moved with speed, weaving metal and wires together. In less than an hour, she had built a small hover device, something the man himself could never have made alone. When it lifted off the ground smoothly, he felt both proud and afraid, but danger was never far. As they worked, the sound of voices drifted in from the street. Other scavengers had gathered nearby. Speaking of rumors, they said alien ships were seen above the mountains, searching for something, or someone. The man closed his door and whispered a curse. He knew the patrols would not stop, and scavengers would sell Any secret for a few coins? That evening, while the girl sat quietly eating the simple food he gave her, a sharp crash broke through the silence, the door splintered open, and 3 rough scavengers stormed inside. Their eyes were greedy, their weapons aimed at the man and the girl. "We heard what you're hiding," the leader growled. "An alien treasure, worth more than a lifetime of scrap." The man raised his wrench, ready to fight, but before he could move, the girl stood up slowly, her silver eyes glowed brighter than ever, the air around her hummed with raw energy. Metal scraps lifted from the ground, spinning in circles around her like a storm. The scavengers froze in shock, their weapons shaking in their hands. Then, with a single motion, the girl sent the scraps flying. Blades of sharp metal pinned the intruders against the wall, tearing their weapons away. HFY screamed in fear. Trapped like insects, the man stood frozen, staring at her. This was no weak child anymore, this was something powerful, something dangerous, and now, the whole galaxy would come for her. The city was restless that night, strange lights moved in the sky, and people whispered of ships too large to belong to smugglers. The scavenger stood on the roof of his workshop, staring upward. Far above, dark shapes drifted between the clouds, their hulls glowing with crimson symbols. They were not patrols, not traders, but warships. The girl stood beside him, wrapped in an old cloak, her silver eyes reflected the sky, glowing brighter as the ships passed. She trembled, not from cold, but from recognition. She knew those hunters, she knew the marks on their ships. They had come for her. The man clenched his fists. He had saved her from the dump, but now danger had followed her to his very doorstep. If the hunters searched the city, they would destroy everything in their path. The man felt a heavy weight on his chest. He was only one human scavenger, and yet he had chosen to protect her. The next morning, rumors spread like fire. Strangers knocked on doors, asking questions. Scavengers whispered in alleys about a child with glowing blood. The man heard them and cursed under his breath. The city was turning against him already. That night, he heard the roar of engines again. One of the alien hunters descended into the scrap fields, its lights sweeping across the ground. A voice thundered through the night, carried on speakers, "Return the stolen one, and you will live." The man froze as the girl clutched his arm. Shaking her head, she whispered words in her alien tongue, soft but urgent. Though he did not understand, her fear was clear. She begged him not to hand her over. Her silver eyes glistened with tears. In that moment, he realized the hunters did not see her as a person, they saw her as a weapon to be owned. The man tightened his grip on his wrench. He had no army, no allies, just his stubborn will, but he looked at the GIRL and saw something worth risking everything for. He whispered, "I will not give you to them." Even though she could not understand his words, she seemed to feel them. Her small hand clung to his like iron. Soon the streets filled with soldiers in black armor. They marched in lines, scanning homes with red lights. Their helmets glowed faintly, their weapons sharp and humming with alien power. People hid indoors, afraid to breathe. The scavenger knew it was only a matter of time before they reached his workshop. He pulled the girl inside, shutting every window. The drone she had repaired hovered near the ceiling, silent but ready. The man packed a small bag with tools, energy cells, and food. If they stayed, they would both die. He decided they had to leave before dawn, but fate moved faster than his plan. Before he could act, a loud crash shook the walls. The door burst open, and 2 armored hunters stepped inside. Their red eyes glowed through the masks, weapons raised. "Human," one of them growled in a mechanical voice. "You have something that belongs to us," the girl gasped. Stepping back, the scavenger stood in front of her, raising his wrench like a shield. He felt the madness of the moment, facing alien soldiers with nothing but a tool, but he refused to move aside. The hunters advanced, slow and confident. To them, he was only a weak human delaying the inevitable. Then the girl's power erupted again. Her silver veins blazed with light, filling the room with a soft glow. The drone shot forward, slamming into one hunter, sparks flying. The other soldier raised his blaster, but metal scraps flew from the floor, tearing it from his hands. The hunter staggered, unprepared for her strength. The man grabbed her hand, shouting, "Now, we run." Together they dashed through the back door, into the dark alleys of the city. Shouts and alarms echoed behind them. The warships loomed like predators circling their prey. The hunt had truly begun, and the whole galaxy would soon know of the human who dared to defy them. The city never slept again after the hunters arrived. Every night ships circled above, scanning the streets with red lights. Everyday patrols moved from house to house, demanding answers. Fear spread through the people like fire. No one wanted to be caught hiding an alien child. The scavenger and the girl stayed hidden in old tunnels under the scrap fields. The air was heavy with smoke and dust, but it was safer than the streets above. The girl sat close to the man, her silver eyes glowing softly in the dark. He gave her small pieces of bread and water. The little he had, she ate quietly, her gaze never leaving him. The man knew they could not hide forever. The hunters would never stop searching. If she was truly important to them, they would burn the entire city to ash just to find her. So he made a choice. If they were to survive, they had to be ready. She had to learn how to fight. At first he hesitated. She was only a child, fragile and lost, but when he looked into her eyes, he saw something stronger, something waiting to be awakened. So he picked up 2 wooden sticks from the tunnel floor and handed one to her. "Hold this," he said, pointing to himself, then showing her a simple stance. She copied him quickly. Though her movements were clumsy at first, she was fast to learn. When he swung lightly, she blocked, her glowing veins pulsing brighter. The man smiled faintly. For the first time in weeks, she was learning not just with her hands, but with her instincts. Days turned into nights, and nights into days. They trained in silence, the sound of wood striking wood echoing in the tunnels. She learned how to dodge, how to strike, how to use her small frame to her advantage. He taught her human tricks, throwing sand to blind an enemy, using shadows to disappear. These were not noble lessons, but survival lessons, and she absorbed them all. The bond between them grew stronger. At first, she looked at him with fear. Now she looked at him with trust. She followed his movements, copied his habits, even his stubborn silence. She began to see him not as a stranger, but as something closer to family. And though he never said it out loud, he felt the same. One evening, as they trained, the ground trembled, the tunnels shook as engines roared above. The man froze, listening. A massive warship had landed near the scrap fields, its shadow covering the ground. Dust fell from the ceiling as the girl's eyes widened in fear. The man pulled her close, whispering, "They found us." He grabbed his small bag, stuffed with food and tools, and nodded toward the deeper tunnels. They ran together through the twisting paths, their footsteps echoing behind them. The sound of boots thundered closer, hunters pouring into the tunnels. The girl's power sparked without warning. Loose wires on the walls lit up as she passed, glowing silver. The man pulled her arm, whispering harshly, "Control it," but she could not hide her nature. Every step left a trail of light, guiding their enemies closer. They reached an opening in the tunnels, a hidden exit near the mountains of scrap. The man shoved the door open and pulled her outside. The night air hit them hard, filled with the sound of engines and alarms. Above them, the warship's massive shadow loomed like a giant beast. Its light swept across the ground, searching, hunting. The man turned to her, his voice steady though his heart pounded. "If we stay weak, they will take you, and they will kill me. You must fight," he said firmly, placing his wrench in her hands. She held it tight, her veins glowing brighter than ever. The man raised his own weapon, standing beside her. For the first time, they were not just hiding, they were ready to stand together. The bond of survival was sealed that night, not by words, but by the fire in their eyes. A human scavenger and an alien child, against the empire of hunters. The galaxy did not know it yet, but something dangerous had been born in the shadows. The tunnels were no longer safe. Hunters filled the city like a black tide, searching every shadow. The scavenger knew their time had run out. If they stayed, they would be caught, and there would be no escape. So he turned to the only plan he had kept buried in his heart for years. Deep within the scrap fields lay the broken skeleton of an old starship. For years, he had scavenged its parts, hoping to rebuild something small, a ship not strong enough for war, but maybe strong enough to fly. Now that dream was no longer just for profit, it was their only hope. The girl followed him through the piles of twisted metal, her silver eyes scanned the shadows, her steps light. She trusted him completely now, even when the ground shook with enemy engines above. When they reached the hidden cave, she gasped. The half-built ship stood in silence, patched together from forgotten wrecks. The man placed his hand on its metal frame. "I was building this for myself," he whispered softly, "but now, it is for us." The girl touched the ship too, and her veins glowed brighter. The old panels lit up under her touch, systems waking as if recognizing her. For 3 nights they worked in secret. The man welded, hammered, and bolted scraps into place. The girl used her strange gift, repairing circuits and making dead engines breathe again. Together they became faster than either could be alone. By the fourth night, the ship was alive, its engines humming low, but the hunters were closing in. Patrols searched the scrap fields, voices shouting in alien tongues. Red lights swept across the piles, sometimes passing only a few meters away. The man whispered, "We must finish tonight." The girl nodded, determination burning in her glowing eyes. As dawn approached, the ship was ready, not perfect, not beautiful, but strong enough to fly. The man loaded his small bag of tools and food. The girl carried only the repaired drone, her silent companion. They climbed into the cockpit, hearts racing. Engines roared to life, the ground trembling under the force. Lights flashed across the sky as hunters spotted the movement. Shouts filled the air, weapons firing from the cliffs. The man pulled the controls hard, and the ship lifted into the air. Smoke and fire followed as beams of energy tore through the scrap fields. The ship climbed higher, shaking violently. Panels sparked, alarms screamed, but the girl placed her hands on the controls. Her silver veins glowed as energy surged through the systems. The broken circuits healed under her touch. The engines stabilized, burning brighter than ever. Hunters' ships gave chase, sleek and deadly. Their weapons rained fire, lighting up the sky. The man swerved wildly, dodging beams that exploded around them. The girl focused, guiding the ship with her strange power. Together, pilot and passenger became one force. They broke through the clouds. The stars opened above them, endless and shining. For the first time in her life, the girl smiled freely. The scavenger felt his chest tighten, not with fear, but with awe. They had escaped the city, escaped the hunters, at least for now. But victory was short. The ship's old computer spoke in a broken human voice. Warning, unknown technology detected. Ecotech system online. The man froze, staring at the glowing console. Ecotech, the forbidden human weapon that had once shaken the galaxy, a secret buried in history, feared by every alien empire. The girl tilted her head, sensing the power hidden within. Her silver veins pulsed brighter, as if answering the machine. The scavenger gripped the controls tightly. This was no ordinary escape. This was the beginning of something far greater. The galaxy would not let them rest now. The cockpit glowed with warning lights. The scavenger gripped the controls, sweat dripping from his brow. The computer repeated its message in a broken metallic voice. Ecotech system online. Human override required. The words chilled him to the bone. He had heard legends of Ecotech when he was a child, stories whispered in dark corners, banned in schools and erased from records. It was said that during the First Great Wars, humans created weapons so dangerous that entire fleets vanished in seconds. The alien empires had united to crush humanity, and Ecotech was buried with them. But now, in his patched-together ship, that ghost had awakened. The girl leaned closer to the glowing console. Her silver veins pulsed brighter, as if the machine was speaking directly to her. She placed her hand on the panel, and the ship hummed with new life. The scavenger pulled her hand away quickly, his voice sharp. "No, don't touch it." Her silver eyes widened with confusion, but she obeyed. He stared at the console, heart pounding. What was a weapon of lost humanity doing inside a wrecked starship, and why did it respond to her? The man shook his head, knowing the answer would not matter if they were caught. Outside, the hunter's ship still chased them, streaks of fire cutting across the stars. The girl pointed to the console again, her voice urgent in her alien tongue. She wanted to use it. The man shook his head fiercely. "If this is what I think it is, it could destroy everything, even us." But the ship jolted as enemy fire struck the hull. Sparks rained down, alarms screamed, and fear filled the cockpit. The scavenger pulled the controls, weaving between blasts, but there were too many hunters, too fast, too strong. The girl gripped his arm, her eyes glowing like molten silver. She pressed her other hand onto the panel again. The ship roared as the Ecotech responded. Systems unlocking one by one. Symbols flashed on the screen, strange human codes mixed with alien markings. A deep vibration shook the ship. From its belly, a hidden pulse generator unfolded, glowing with fierce white light. The hunters sensed the danger too late. A single wave of energy erupted, silent and blinding. Every enemy ship around them froze mid-flight, their engines dead, their lights fading. The scavenger shielded his eyes, gasping. The space outside was littered with lifeless ships drifting in silence. Dozens of hunters had been shut down in an instant, not destroyed, but disabled, powerless. The girl pulled her hand away slowly, her chest rising and falling with exhaustion. The scavenger turned to her, shock and fear mixing in his eyes. You activated it, he whispered. She only stared at him, too tired to answer, but deep inside, he realized the truth. This alien child was not just a survivor, she was the key to unlocking the lost weapons of humanity. Silence filled the cockpit as the stars stretched before them. The man sat back, his heart racing. He had wanted to protect her, to keep her hidden, but now, she carried the power to shake the galaxy itself. If the hunters reported what had happened, every empire would descend on them. He looked at her, curled up in the seat beside him. She looked small again, fragile, as if the power inside her was eating away at her strength. The scavenger clenched his jaw. He could no longer think of her as a burden or a mistake. She was his responsibility, and maybe, his only chance to survive what was coming. Far in the distance, new signals appeared on the radar. More ships, larger, faster. The Empire was coming with greater force, and now they knew the truth. The human weapon was not gone, it had been reborn. The scavenger whispered into the silence. They will hunt us to the ends of the stars now. The girl stirred, her glowing eyes meeting his, and though she could not speak his language, he understood her look. They would fight together, whatever came next. The ship drifted in silence after the ecotech blast. Enemy hunters floated powerless, scattered across the void like broken toys. The scavenger stared at the stars, his heart still beating too fast. The girl sat beside him, pale and exhausted, her glowing veins dimmer than before. He wanted to believe they were safe, but deep inside, he knew safety no longer existed. Word would spread, somehow, somewhere. Survivors would carry the tale of the forbidden human weapon returning. The empires would not ignore it. They would come in greater numbers, in larger fleets, and sooner or later, they would find them. The scavenger plotted a course to a hidden outpost at the edge of the sector. It was a place where smugglers and scavengers traded secrets. He had a contact there, someone who owed him favors. Maybe they could hide, maybe they could refuel. At least, it was better than drifting blind in space. When they reached the outpost, its metal ring glowed faintly against the dark. Ships of every kind hovered near it, pirates, traders, and deserters. The scavenger guided his patched vessel into a docking bay. The girl pressed her face to the window, her eyes wide at the sight of so many ships. She had never seen so much life in one place. Inside the bay, the air smelled of oil and smoke. Shadows moved across the walls as smugglers eyed them carefully. The scavenger kept his head low, pulling the girl's cloak tighter around her. If anyone saw her glowing veins, they would know, and secrets never stayed hidden long in places like this. His contact appeared soon, a tall scavenger with scarred hands and sharp eyes. Been a long time, the man said with a crooked smile. The scavenger nodded, saying little. He trusted this man once, but trust was fragile out here. Still, he needed fuel, supplies, and silence. The girl clung to his arm, uneasy. Her eyes scanned the walls, sensing danger where he saw only shadows. She whispered in her alien tongue, tugging his sleeve. He hushed her softly, trying not to draw attention, but her instincts were sharper than his. Later, in the dark of the docking chamber, his contact leaned close. You're carrying something, aren't you? The man whispered. Something big, something worth more than your life. The scavenger's jaw tightened, his hand hovering near his wrench. He shook his head slowly, but the scarred man only grinned wider. Betrayal came quickly. The door behind them slid open, and armed scavengers poured in. Blasters hummed as they surrounded the man and the girl. The scarred trader stepped forward, his eyes cold and greedy. You think you can keep power like that hidden? He sneered. The empires pay well for human ghosts and alien freaks. The girl's cloak slipped, silver veins glowing in the dim light. Gasps filled the room as the scavengers realized what she was. The leader raised his hand, signaling his men, take her alive. Kill the human if he resists. The girl gripped the scavenger's arm tightly, her eyes wide with fear. The man raised his wrench, ready to fight even though the odds were hopeless. He had faced hunters, machines, and soldiers, but betrayal cut deeper than any blade. Still, he would not surrender her, not to aliens, not to scavengers, not to anyone. The girl's power flared again, sparks danced across the walls. Metal groaned as energy surged, but before she could unleash it fully, one scavenger fired a stun blast. The beam struck her chest, and she collapsed, her silver eyes flickering shut. The man roared, charging forward, swinging his wrench with fury. He fought like a wild animal, smashing weapons, breaking bones, but there were too many, and their numbers overwhelmed him. A blow to the back of his head sent him crashing to the floor. The last thing he saw was the girl being dragged away, her small body limp, her glowing veins fading as the traitors carried her into the dark. When he awoke, the docking chamber was silent. His head throbbed, his wrists bound with steel cuffs. The ship was gone, the girl was gone, only the echo of betrayal remained, and for the first time, he felt truly alone in the stars. The scavenger lay on the cold floor of the docking chamber, chains cut into his wrists, and blood trickled from the wound on his head. His ship was gone, his tools were gone, and worst of all, the girl was gone. The traitors had sold her to the hunters, delivering her into the very hands she feared. For a long moment, he wanted to give up, to close his eyes and let the darkness take him, but then he remembered her silver eyes, the way she clung to his arm when she was afraid, the way she trusted him even when he had nothing but a rusty wrench. That memory burned inside him like fire, and the fire gave him strength. With a grunt, he twisted his wrists, forcing pain through his arms. The chains scraped his skin, but finally snapped loose. He staggered to his feet, dizzy but alive. No weapons, no ship, no allies, yet he refused to stop. He would find her, even if he had to tear through the stars with his bare hands. He moved through the outpost like a shadow. Smugglers laughed and drank, unaware that a storm walked among them. The scavenger stole a hood from a rack and pulled it low. He listened for rumors, whispers, anything that could lead him to her. At last, he heard the words that made his blood run cold. The hunter's mothership is in orbit. A traitor muttered, they paid good credits for that glowing child. The scavenger clenched his fists, teeth grinding. So it was true, she was aboard the enemy's most guarded vessel. Most men would turn back, but not him. He slipped into a storage hangar, where small crafts were left unattended. His hands moved fast, rewiring controls, stealing fuel, patching wires with scraps. Within an hour, a stolen shuttle roared to life, and the scavenger lifted off, heading straight for the mothership. The alien warship hung in space like a beast of metal. Its hull was covered in sharp spines, its engines burning crimson. Thousands of lights dotted its surface, each one a watchful eye. The scavenger's heart pounded, but he forced himself forward. He had no plan but one: get inside, and never stop fighting until he reached her. He guided the shuttle toward a cargo bay. With quick hands, he faked the landing codes using scraps of stolen data. The bay doors opened slowly, and he slipped inside. As soon as the shuttle touched down, he leapt out, moving through the shadows like a ghost. Inside the mothership, the halls were endless and cold. Hunters marched in formation, their boots echoing on the steel floors. The scavenger crept behind them, using his small size and quick reflexes to vanish in corners. Every step was a gamble, but desperation made him bold. Finally, he reached the chamber where the air hummed with strange energy. Through a slit in the wall, he saw her. The girl was bound in wires, her silver veins glowing dim. Machines drained her strength, feeding it into the ship itself. Her eyes were closed, her body weak. The sight filled him with rage so strong it nearly blinded him. He grabbed a fallen guard's weapon. It was heavier than his wrench, but it would do. He stormed the chamber, blasting machines and tearing wires from the walls. Alarms screamed, hunters shouted, but he didn't care. All he saw was the girl, and all he wanted was to free her. The wires snapped one by one under his strikes. The girl gasped as air rushed back into her lungs. Her silver eyes flickered open, meeting his with shock and relief. He smiled faintly, bleeding, bruised, but unbroken. I came for you, he whispered, though she couldn't understand his words. But the ship itself shook with fury. Hunters swarmed into the chamber. Weapons raised. The scavenger stood protectively in front of her, one human against an empire, and yet, for the first time, he felt no fear. The chamber shook with alarms. Red lights flashed across the walls, and the sound of boots thundered through the corridors. The scavenger stood with his back to the girl, weapon in his hand, eyes burning with fire. Dozens of hunters poured into the room, their armor glowing crimson, their blades humming with energy, yet he did not step back. The girl was weak, still bound by half-broken wires. Her silver veins flickered like fading stars. She tried to rise but collapsed, her voice a faint whisper. The scavenger gritted his teeth. No more running, he muttered under his breath. If this was where he died, he would die standing. The hunters advanced, confident and cruel, but the scavenger moved first, faster than they expected. He swung the stolen blaster like a hammer, smashing helmets and knocking soldiers to the ground. He ducked under a blade, drove his fist into another, and snatched a fallen weapon from the floor. For every strike he gave, pain burned through his body, but he refused to stop. The girl's eyes widened as she watched, a single human fighting like a storm, refusing to break. Her trembling hands reached for the broken wires around her. She pulled them apart slowly, feeding her last strength into the effort. Every spark from her veins lit the chamber brighter. More hunters rushed in, filling the chamber wall to wall. The scavenger's breath came heavy, his arms shaking. Still, he raised his weapon and stood tall. Then the ground shook as a massive figure stepped through the door. The warlord himself had come. He was taller than any soldier, covered in black armor lined with glowing marks. His eyes burned like red fire beneath the helmet. He carried a blade taller than the scavenger's body. The room fell silent as his voice echoed like thunder. "You are human," the warlord growled, "a relic of a broken race, daring to defy me." The scavenger spat blood and raised his weapon. "Then you'll learn what one relic can do." The warlord laughed, the sound shaking the walls. Then he charged, blade slicing through the air. The scavenger rolled aside, the strike shattering the floor behind him. They clashed again and again, metal against metal, sparks flying. The warlord's strength was like a mountain, each strike nearly breaking the scavenger's arms, but the human's speed and fury kept him alive. Every move was desperate, every second borrowed from death. The girl finally broke free from her bonds. She fell to her knees, gasping, her silver eyes blazing bright. The ship trembled as her energy flared. She stretched her hands, and machines bent to her will. The ecotech systems deep within the ship began to awaken. The warlord noticed her, his blade turning toward her small figure. The scavenger roared and threw himself in the way. The strike knocked him back, his body slamming against the wall. Pain exploded through him, but he forced himself up again. "I said, you will not touch her," he growled. The girl rose to her feet, her entire body glowing like liquid silver. The ship's walls shook, lights bursting as ecotech surged. Hunters staggered, their weapons shutting down, their armor failing. The warlord swung his blade again, but this time she raised her hand. The weapon froze mid-air, locked by invisible force. The scavenger saw his chance. With a final cry, he lunged forward, driving the stolen blade deep into the warlord's chest. The giant roared, his armor cracking, energy spilling out like fire. The ground shook as he collapsed, his blade shattering into pieces. The chamber fell silent except for the sound of the scavenger's ragged breath. The girl rushed to him, her small hands glowing as she touched his wounds. Warmth spread through his body, pain fading as her energy wrapped around him. He looked into her eyes, silver light reflecting in his tired gaze. Together, they had done the impossible. A human scavenger and an alien child had brought down a galactic warlord. But outside the chamber, the mothership still burned with chaos. Alarms screamed, engines shook, and the ecotech pulsed stronger than ever. The battle was not truly over, it was only about to grow larger. For now, though, they had won their first true victory together. The warlord's body lay broken on the steel floor, his massive blade shattered into silent fragments. For the first time, the chamber was quiet. The scavenger leaned heavily against the wall, his body bruised, his breath sharp. Beside him, the girl stood glowing with silver light, her veins bright like rivers of fire. They had won, but the battle was not yet finished. The mothership trembled, sparks raining from the ceiling. Ecotech pulsed through its veins, no longer under the warlord's control. Systems screamed in panic, engines tearing themselves apart. The ship itself was dying. The scavenger grabbed the girl's hand. "We have to leave," he whispered, even though she could not understand, but she nodded, her eyes shining with trust. Together they ran through the burning corridors. Hunters lay scattered, their armor useless, their weapons dead. The ship roared as explosions spread, panels ripped from the walls, air venting into space. The scavenger pulled her close, guiding her through smoke and fire. They stumbled into a docking bay, half destroyed. One last escape craft waited there, sparks flying from its engines. They climbed aboard, the scavenger forcing the controls alive. The girl pressed her glowing hands to the panels. The ship answered her touch, systems stabilizing. Engines roared, the small craft shooting from the collapsing mothership. Behind them, the giant vessel tore apart, a burning star across the void. For a long moment, silence returned. The scavenger sat in the pilot's seat, trembling. The girl leaned against him, her small body weak, her silver eyes closed, but her hand still gripped his tightly. They had survived the impossible, but survival was only the beginning. The galaxy had seen what happened. Ecotech had returned, awakened by a scavenger and a child. Whispers would spread faster than fire, empires would prepare. Afraid of the name, human, once again, the scavenger stared out at the endless stars. He had never wanted war, never wanted glory. All he had ever wanted was to live quietly, but fate had chosen otherwise. Now he carried the most dangerous secret in the galaxy. The girl stirred, opening her glowing eyes. She looked at him, her expression soft. In her own tongue, she spoke words he did not understand, but her tone was gentle, filled with something new, not only gratitude, but affection. He blinked, realizing the truth. She was no longer just the child he saved from the scrap dump, no longer just a stranger with strange power. She had become family, and perhaps something more. He smiled faintly, placing a hand on her shoulder. You're safe now, he whispered. She leaned closer, her silver eyes shining, and for the first time since he found her, she looked not lost, but at peace. The stars stretched endlessly before them, a future uncertain, filled with danger and war, but also filled with the bond they had forged in fire. The scavenger tightened his grip on the controls. Whatever came next, they would face it together. And far away, across the galaxy, messages spread like wildfire, a rumor that one human had stood against an empire and lived, a whisper that the old ghosts of humanity had returned, a shadow that would change every world. The age of fear had ended, and the age of humanity was beginning again.